They said she was just confused, that he was just tired, that the bruises were accidents. But the truth? It was abuse, and no one believed her until it was too late. Elder abuse is real, it's rising, and most of the time, it's invisible. If you think it can't happen in your family, think again. Every year, millions of older adults suffer abuse, often from the very people they trust most. And most of the time, no one sees it. Or worse, they see it and look away. Elder abuse isn't always what you think. It's not just bruises or yelling. It can be subtle. A caregiver withholding medication, a family member pressuring someone into changing their will, a neighbor isolating a senior from friends. Abuse can be physical, emotional, financial, or neglectful. And all of it leaves deep scars. One woman shared, "He never hit her when anyone was watching, but I started noticing she flinched when he walked into the room. By the time someone spoke up, it was too late." Abuse in older adults is one of the most underreported crimes because victims are often too afraid, too isolated, or too ashamed to say anything. And those around them? They don't want to believe it. This video will expose the red flags, the manipulative patterns, and the warning signs that are easy to miss until it's too late. And more importantly, we'll show you how to speak up, step in, and protect the people who once protected you. So what is elder abuse, really? Most people picture bruises or harsh words, and yes, those can be part of it. But elder abuse is far more layered, far more common, and far more silent than we like to believe. There are 5 main forms of elder abuse, and understanding each one is the first step to recognizing when something isn't right. First, there's physical abuse. This includes hitting, shoving, slapping, or using physical force in any way that causes pain or injury. It can also mean inappropriate use of restraints or medications to sedate someone. Often the signs are hidden, bruises explained away, broken bones blamed on accidents, or visible fear when the abuser is near. Next is emotional or psychological abuse. This is harder to see but just as damaging. It includes threats, insults, controlling behavior, humiliation, or intentionally isolating a senior from friends and family. A once outgoing loved one who becomes withdrawn or anxious may not be slipping. They may be suffering in silence. Financial exploitation is shockingly common. It happens when someone takes advantage of an older adult's money, property, or financial decisions. It could be stealing cash, forging signatures, manipulating someone into changing their will, or pressuring them into gifting assets. In many cases, it starts small, an extra debit card, a joint account, and spirals into total financial control. Then there's neglect. It's not always about what's done, it's about what's withheld. Neglect means failing to provide basic needs: food, clean clothes, medicine, safety, or emotional support. It might be a caregiver who forgets meals or medications, or worse, a family member who's given up entirely. And finally, sexual abuse. Yes, it happens, even to the elderly. It includes any unwanted sexual contact, harassment, or exposure, especially with individuals who are cognitively impaired and unable to give consent. It's rarely spoken about, but that doesn't mean it's rare. In nursing homes and even family homes, it can and does occur. What's most heartbreaking is that in the majority of cases, the abuser is someone the elder knows and trusts. A child, a grandchild, a paid caregiver, a neighbor. Sometimes it's even a spouse. That familiarity is what makes it so difficult to report and so easy to dismiss. Victims may be afraid of retaliation, ashamed to speak out, or even convinced they somehow deserve it. And when the abuser is the one providing food, housing, or medication, the victim may feel they have no choice but to stay quiet. Friends, family members, and even medical professionals often miss or overlook the warning signs because they don't want to believe it's true or they don't know what to look for. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. Elder abuse doesn't always leave a mark you can see. Sometimes it shows up in bills that don't add up, in medicine that's always out, in an elder who used to smile and now just stares out the window. It's not always loud, it's not always violent, but it is always dangerous. And unless we name it, we can't fight it. Recognizing the types of abuse is the beginning. It opens our eyes, and more importantly, it opens the door for intervention. Because no one deserves to grow older in fear. No one should have to suffer in silence. And no one, absolutely no one, deserves to be hurt by someone they trust. If elder abuse is so common, why does it so often go unseen? The truth is heartbreaking. Most victims never tell anyone, and when they do, they're often not believed. For many seniors, speaking up feels more dangerous than staying silent. There's shame, not wanting others to know what's happening. There's fear of retaliation, fear of losing what little support they have, fear of being placed in a facility, and above all, there's isolation. Abuse often thrives behind closed doors, in quiet homes, where the only witness is the person causing the harm. Some victims don't even fully recognize what's happening to them, especially when the abuse comes from someone they love. It doesn't always feel like violence. It can feel like manipulation, like guilt, like maybe I'm the problem. That confusion keeps them stuck. And for those living with cognitive decline, the risks are even greater. When someone has Alzheimer's or dementia, their words are often questioned. They may report something strange and it's written off as paranoia or confusion. She's just imagining things. He doesn't know what he's saying. These assumptions create the perfect cover for abusers because even if the victim speaks, they're not taken seriously. That's not just dangerous, it's deadly. Society as a whole is part of the problem. We tend to minimize the voices of older adults, especially older women. We dismiss their complaints, we infantilize them. We chalk everything up to aging rather than paying attention to the patterns that point to something darker. And abusers know this. That's why they hide in plain sight. Most abusers don't look like villains. They present themselves as helpful, devoted caregivers. They may appear attentive, selfless, even overly involved. They'll talk over the elder, make excuses, position themselves as the only one who's there for the victim. To outsiders, they seem like heroes. But behind closed doors, they're controlling every part of that person's life. Money, food, phone calls, medical care. And when something feels off, when a neighbor or nurse or family member gets a bad feeling, they hesitate. Because how do you accuse someone who seems so well-intentioned? How do you trust the word of a confused or fragile elder over the clear, confident voice of their caregiver? That doubt is exactly how the abuse continues. This is why elder abuse goes unreported in more than 85% of cases, because too often we don't believe the people living it. We dismiss the bruises, we rationalize the silence, we ignore the tension, we assume everything's fine until it's not, until someone ends up in the hospital, or worse, doesn't wake up at all. But the warning signs were there. We just didn't know how to see them, or maybe we didn't want to. The silence surrounding elder abuse doesn't come from lack of care. It comes from lack of awareness, from the belief that it doesn't happen here, from the instinct to avoid uncomfortable truths. But if we truly care about our elders, if we truly want them to live with dignity and safety, we have to push past that discomfort. Because the most dangerous abuse isn't just the kind that hurts the body. It's the kind that convinces the world nothing's wrong. Once you understand what elder abuse is and why it's so often hidden, the next step is knowing exactly what to look for. Because sometimes it's not the obvious signs that speak the loudest. It's the subtle shifts that whisper when no one's paying attention. The first sign is a sudden change in mood or behavior. Maybe your normally upbeat parent becomes withdrawn, quiet, or anxious. Maybe they flinch when touched or laugh nervously when someone else speaks for them. One woman shared that her mother, who used to call every day, suddenly stopped answering the phone. When she finally got through, her mother sounded hesitant, like she wasn't allowed to talk freely. That shift wasn't just aging, it was a red flag. Another warning sign is unexplained injuries or bruises. These are often brushed off as falls or accidents, but take a closer look. Are the bruises in unusual places, like the wrists, arms, or back? Do they show up frequently without a clear story? One caregiver noticed small fingertip-shaped bruises on her father's forearm. When she asked about them, he looked down and changed the subject. The silence said more than any words. Isolation is another powerful sign. Abusers often try to cut off their victims from friends, family, and even neighbors. If your loved one suddenly stops attending events, answering calls, or seeing visitors, ask why. Pay attention to who controls access to them. Do calls get screened? Are visits always inconvenient? This kind of gatekeeping is rarely about convenience, it's often about control. Watch for unusual financial activity too. This could mean large withdrawals, missing valuables, unpaid bills despite enough income, or sudden changes to a will or power of attorney. One man discovered his aunt's retirement account was nearly empty despite her living modestly. Her caregiver had been transferring money slowly over months, framing each transaction as an emergency. Then there are the physical signs of neglect. If someone you love looks disheveled, smells unclean, or wears the same clothes for days, something's wrong. Bed sores, malnutrition, dehydration, or missed medications are all urgent signs. One nurse described a patient who arrived at the hospital with severe bed sores and a urinary tract infection. Her caregiver claimed she was just slowing down, but the records showed a history of skipped appointments and medication lapses. In each of these cases, what's most important isn't just the symptom, it's the pattern. No single sign confirms abuse, but when small changes start to add up, they demand attention. Start by asking open-ended questions. How have you been feeling lately? Has anyone made you uncomfortable? Do you feel safe at home? And if you're not satisfied with the answers, or if you feel you're being kept at a distance, trust your instincts. Abuse thrives in silence, but awareness breaks that silence. If something feels off, don't wait. Document what you see. Ask more questions. Get a second opinion. And above all, stay present. Because the people we love deserve more than comfort in their final years. They deserve safety, dignity, and someone who's watching closely enough to see what others choose to ignore. For all the facts, statistics, and red flags, sometimes the clearest truths come from the stories, the real voices that were never heard in time. There was Mr. Anderson, a retired school principal, always neat, always punctual. Neighbors said he'd started missing his morning walks. They figured he was just slowing down. What they didn't know was that his adult son had moved in and slowly taken control. First the finances, then the medication, then the freedom. When emergency responders were finally called, it was too late. Mr. Anderson had been malnourished for weeks, living mostly in one chair. No one had thought to ask why his shades stayed drawn for months. Or take the case of Maria, age 79, living in an assisted living facility. Staff described her as confused, sometimes dramatic. When she told a nurse that a caregiver had touched her wrong, it was brushed off as hallucination. Maria had early-stage dementia. She couldn't always remember what day it was, but she remembered that caregiver's voice. 2 months later, another resident came forward with a similar complaint. Only then did anyone take it seriously. The abuse had gone on for nearly a year. Then there was Evelyn. Independent, sharp, generous to a fault. Her niece moved in to help out after Evelyn had a minor fall. At first, it seemed like a good arrangement, but over time, Evelyn stopped answering the phone. Her church friends said they hadn't seen her in weeks. Her niece explained it away. She's just tired, not feeling social. A neighbor finally noticed Evelyn hadn't taken out the trash in nearly a month. When authorities got involved, they discovered unpaid bills, a house in disarray, and Evelyn in a back bedroom, too weak to walk, too afraid to speak. These aren't stories pulled from headlines. They're echoes of real events happening in homes and care facilities across the country. And the truth is, abuse rarely looks obvious in the moment. It hides behind explanations that seem reasonable. She's just getting old. He's been forgetful lately. They're tired. They don't want company. All of these sound harmless until you realize they're not. Even well-meaning people, doctors, social workers, neighbors, family, can miss the signs, not because they don't care, but because they assume the best, because they're too busy or too uncomfortable to ask hard questions. And that's what makes elder abuse so difficult to stop. No one wants to believe that someone would hurt their aging parent or neglect their grandmother or take advantage of someone who once raised them. But the truth? It happens. And it happens more than most are willing to admit. The lesson isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. Because once you hear these stories, you can't unhear them. You start to see the patterns. You notice when someone pulls away, when a once chatty neighbor falls silent, when something just doesn't feel right. And that's when you have a choice to look away or to lean in. Because elder abuse doesn't stop on its own. It stops when someone refuses to pretend they didn't notice, when someone believes the quiet voice in the corner of the room. Someone like you. By now you've heard the stories, you've seen the signs, and maybe something in you is stirring. Maybe there's a name, a face, a quiet memory that keeps tugging at your attention. If that's the case, don't dismiss it. So often, the first sign that something's wrong isn't visual, it's instinct. A subtle unease, a feeling that something just isn't adding up. And too often we talk ourselves out of it. I don't want to overreact. Maybe I'm imagining it. They seem fine. But if something feels off, listen to that voice, because it's better to be wrong and ask a question than to stay silent and regret it later. Start small. Start privately. Begin with observation. Is the person withdrawn, fearful, or suddenly unreachable? Is their living space messier than usual? Do they seem nervous when someone else speaks for them? Begin documenting anything that raises concern. You don't have to make accusations, but you can take notes. Dates, times, specific behaviors. If you see bruises, take discrete photos. If money is disappearing, write down the patterns. These records matter if formal action becomes necessary. If you're not sure what to do next, you're not alone. That's why resources exist. Adult Protective Services, APS, is the main organization in the United States tasked with investigating reports of elder abuse or neglect. You can make an anonymous report. You don't need proof. You just need a concern. There are also elder abuse hotlines in most states, and the National Center on Elder Abuse offers guidance on how and where to report, depending on your location. Many local law enforcement departments and social service agencies have dedicated personnel for senior welfare. If your loved one is in a facility, don't hesitate to escalate concerns. Speak to administrators. If they brush you off, go higher. Every nursing home or assisted living center is required to follow federal guidelines for safety and care. Silence enables harm. Advocacy saves lives. And if you're a friend, a neighbor, or just someone who noticed something that didn't sit right, ask the hard questions. Are you okay? Has anyone hurt you? Do you feel safe at home? These aren't easy questions, but they open the door for someone who may have been waiting for just one person to care enough to ask. Breaking the silence doesn't mean confrontation. It means connection. It means being the one who doesn't turn away, the one who checks in, the one who writes it down, the one who refuses to let fear speak louder than love. Because the truth is, you might be the only one who notices, the only one who's close enough to see the changes, the only one who has the courage to follow that instinct. And that courage, it can make all the difference. Elder abuse doesn't always look like a crime scene. Sometimes it looks like a quiet house, a missed phone call, a single unanswered question. But behind that silence, someone may be hoping, praying, that someone like you notices. So if something feels wrong, act, speak, document, reach out. Because too many people stay silent until it's too late. But you don't have to be one of them. Elder abuse doesn't always look violent. More often, it hides behind politeness, behind silence, behind a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. It can be a tremble in the voice, a change in routine, a decline that happens quietly and without explanation. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because we're conditioned to look for bruises, for outbursts, for drama, but the real stories, the most heartbreaking ones, are usually quiet. A senior afraid to speak up, a caregiver manipulating behind closed doors, a life slowly unraveling while everyone around them assumes everything is fine. The truth is, elder abuse is happening all around us, in nursing homes, in nice neighborhoods, in families that appear close and caring. And the victims? They're not always able to ask for help. Some are scared, some are ashamed, some don't even realize what's happening until they've lost their money, their safety, or their voice. That's why it falls to us, to be the ones who see what others miss, to ask the questions no one else is asking, to lean in when others pull away. We must be a voice for those who may not be heard. It starts with one decision: to pay attention, to notice when someone stops showing up, to follow your gut when something doesn't feel right, to check in even when it's uncomfortable, and, when needed, to speak up, report, intervene. Because silence protects no one. Your attention, your concern, your willingness to act, those are lifelines. They might be the only thing standing between someone you love and a story that ends too soon. You don't need a title or a badge to make a difference. You just need a heart that refuses to ignore what matters. Because if we don't listen when they whisper, we may only hear them when it's too late. And by then, the damage may already be done. So listen closely, look carefully, love, and let the elders in your life know they're not invisible, they're not forgotten, and they will not be left to suffer in silence. Not on your watch, not anymore. If this video opened your eyes or your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it, talk about it, start the conversation no one wants to have, but everyone needs to hear. Subscribe to Elderly Truths for more honest, compassionate stories that protect, inform, and empower. Because aging should come with dignity, not danger, with peace, not silence. And if you suspect something isn't right, trust your instincts. Your voice could be the one that finally gets heard. Thank you for watching, thank you for caring, and thank you for standing up for the ones who may no longer be able to stand up for themselves. Until next time, stay kind, stay vigilant, and stay human.